Hi guys, Chris here, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about the books I read between September 22nd and September 28th. First up is The Stars Are Fire by Anita Shreve. I gave this book 2.75 stars. This is a historical fiction that is set in Maine in 1947. We follow a woman named Grace, who is pregnant and has 2 kids and lives with her husband. There's currently a drought in Maine, and when fires suddenly take up, it burns everything around her, including her home, and she and the kids are forced back as far as the ocean. As Grace struggles to protect her 2 kids, with fire at their backs and ocean at their front, she has a horrible night, and when she awakes, she is penniless, homeless, and alone with no word as to what has happened to her husband, who is part of the volunteer fire department. This story then follows on as to Grace's movements with her kids after the fire and the choices that she has to make. I thought this book was alright. It had an intriguing premise, and I found Grace to be a strong woman who fought for her kids, but there were some things about this story that I didn't like. I felt like not enough time was spent with Grace and her family before the fire started. I wish we would have gotten to see more of her life there and maybe some more backstory on Grace and her family before the tragedy strikes. I also really disliked her husband, so I wasn't invested in him at all. And there's a twist that comes partway through the book, and I didn't like that or what came after that either. I feel like this maybe just wasn't a book for me, or maybe it was just the wrong time for me to be reading that book. I will say I listened to it on audiobook, and the voice acting on the audiobook is pretty great. The book flew by. Next up, I read The Darkest Hour by Erin Hunter. This is the finale to the first arc in the Warriors series. So if you've never read Warriors before, this follows different clans of wild, like, forest cats. And we follow a house cat who decides to leave his humans and go live in the forest with one of the clans. Obviously, I can't say too much about this particular book because there would be spoilers for the first 5. But I really love this book. This is a reread for me. I love this series. I love slipping back into this world and getting to experience things with these characters again. There are events that happen in this book that prevent me from giving it a full 5 stars and cause me to knock my rating back to 4.25 stars. But either way, I love this book. I love this series, and I can't wait to continue reading more of them. Next up, I read The Eureka Key by Sarah L. Thompson, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. This is a middle grade mystery. In this book, we follow Sam, Martina, and Theo. Sam and Martina have won a contest for a trip across America. The kids are getting to see historical wonders, and during this, they realize that there's more to this trip than they bargained for. They, in actuality, will be looking for the Founder's Keys. The Founding Fathers left a weapon designed by Benjamin Franklin, and they hid 7 keys, and each of these keys is required to unlock the weapon. Obviously, going into it, Sam did not know that that was the purpose of the trip. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as it sounds, as a descendant of Benedict Arnold is also looking for the keys for nefarious reasons. I thought this was a decent start to the series. It really set up the characters and the stakes and explained the backstory of these keys and the adventure they're going to be on. I thought there were some intriguing puzzles and mysteries that the kids had to go through to obtain the first key. And I'm really looking forward to reading the next book in the series and seeing what happens next. Next up, I read The Train to Impossible Places by P.G. Bell. I gave this book 4.25 stars. This is a middle grade fantasy, and we follow Susie, who one night wakes up after hearing some noises and goes down to her living room and finds that a train is sitting in the middle of her living room. On this train are trolls, and she ends up deciding to sneak aboard the train and travel wherever this train is going. Come to find out, it is a delivery train. It's like a postal express. And she ends up helping to deliver packages. On her first stop, the package is able to speak and convinces her that if she delivers it, then the entire land of impossible places where this train is from will be put into danger. Susie then must make a choice as to whether to listen to this package or go about delivering it and going back to the train. I really enjoyed this book. I liked the world that was built. I thought Susie was a very interesting protagonist. I liked seeing her make the decisions that she did. I really liked a lot of the characters that she interacted with. I thought that there was a nice little mystery in there as well. And it was interesting to see Susie trying to figure out who she could trust and who she couldn't. This is for sure going to be a series that I can't wait to finish. Next up, I read Firestar Quest by Erin Hunter. This is a super edition for the Warriors series. These are kind of companion novels that are like one and dones. Usually in the Warriors series, they have like arcs of 6. This is just a big like story that's just a one shot, like told in one book. Obviously, I can't really, again, talk about what goes on in this book as it would be spoilers for the beginning of the series, as this takes place after the events of the first arc of 6. But I really love this book. I love some of the characters we get to meet. And as this, again, is about cats living in a forest who have interesting names, 2 of my favorite names in the series are contained in this book. I just love their names, and I gave this book 5 stars. I loved it, and I look forward to continuing to read more in this series with these characters in this world. Next up, I read A Shadow Bright and Burning by Jessica Cluess. This is a young adult fantasy where we follow a girl named Henrietta. One day she's out with her friend Rook, and these beings attack her and Rook, and she has to make a choice. Does she continue to hide the magic that she was born with, or does she save her friend? It is dangerous for women to have magic in the time this story is told. They are accused of being witches and tend to be executed. In the end, Henrietta knows that she must save her friend despite the potential consequences. She does what she has to do and saves Rook. In this world, the lands are being attacked by these creatures known as the Ancients. When Henrietta reveals her power, she finds out that there has been a prophecy that a girl would be the key to defeating the Ancients, and they believe that she is this girl. So she travels to London to learn how to harness and use her magic. There she trains with her fellow male sorcerers, and during her training finds out that she believes she is not the prophesized one. And that leads her to trying to figure out what she's going to have to do with that information, since everybody believes that she is. And if she isn't, that could mean certain death for her. I thought the setup of this book was quite interesting, seeing Henrietta being so close to Rook, who is treated differently because he's been attacked by these servants of the Ancients before. And in their world, that makes them unclean if they survive those attacks, and they're kind of shunned by society. But Henrietta refuses to stand aside and let her friend get hurt, even if it means, in her mind, certain death for herself. I really enjoyed getting to learn how the magic works and getting to see some of the friends she makes along the way, especially considering she can never be certain that if they knew the truth, they would truly be her friends. And it is interesting to see how those relationships develop throughout the novel. I think that the magic system is well explained, and this is another series that I plan to continue. Next up, I listened to the audiobook for Song of a Whale by Lynn Kelly. I gave this book 5 stars. In this book, we follow 12-year-old Iris, who is deaf. She really likes working on electronics and fixing them. One day at school, she has to watch this documentary, and she finds out about this whale known as Blue 55. He sings at a higher frequency than most whales do, so he cannot communicate with his fellow whales. Iris feels a companionship with Blue 55, as she too sometimes has difficulty communicating with her peers since she is in a hearing school and is the only deaf kid there. She then makes it her mission to create a song that will play at the right frequency for Blue 55. The only question is, how will she get it to him? I thought this was such a beautiful story. It was so moving to hear Iris's struggles about fitting in and how hard it was sometimes to relate to members of her family who were hearing, or the students at school who were hearing, or even a deaf friend she has who goes to an all-deaf school, because even there she doesn't quite fit in because, well, she goes to a hearing school and there are certain things she doesn't know about current sign language because she knows the sign language she grew up with. It is also interesting to see her relationship with her grandmother and to hear about her relationship with her grandfather, both of whom are deaf, though her grandfather has since passed on, and how his passing has affected her relationship with her grandmother and how much she misses him. This was just such an amazing story, and I loved every minute of it, and I would seriously recommend checking it out if you haven't already. Next up, I read The Extraordinaries by T.J. Klune. In this story, we follow Nick Bell, who loves to write fan fiction about the Extraordinaries, mainly Shadowstar. Shadowstar is an extraordinary that resides in Nova City, which is where Nick lives. He's completely obsessed with him. One day, after an encounter in person with Shadowstar, Nick decides that he's going to do whatever it takes to become an extraordinary. And he'll do it with or without his friend's help. I found this book to be quite interesting. I really enjoyed the fanfic aspect of it because fanfic is so popular and there are so many fandoms that have very talented fanfic writers, and I think it's such a creative way to bring in that relatable real world aspect. I thought that the kind of superhero twist of The Extraordinaries was interesting, as was Nick learning more about them and the interesting ways he went about trying to figure out how to become one. I like the fact that there is LGBTQ plus rep in here, as Nick is gay and he has 2 female friends who are dating. His best friend also likes boys, and we get to see his ex-boyfriend / sort of friend. So there's lots of rep for that in there. Nick also has ADHD, and I think that also makes him feel like a fleshed out real character, though as I don't have ADHD, I can't speak to the accuracy of that, but I thought that was an interesting character dynamic that, again, made him feel more like a fleshed out real person. I gave this book 4 stars because there was a twist at the end, and I saw that coming long before we got there, but that didn't really diminish my love of this book at all, and I really can't wait to see what happens with Nick and everybody in the next book. Lastly, I read How to Train Your Dragon by Crishetta Cowell. I gave this book 3.25 stars. In this book, we follow Hiccup on his quest to find and train a dragon. This was a quick and enjoyable read. I really liked Hiccup and his dragon, Toothless. I listened to the audiobook of this, and the audiobook was fantastic. So I'd highly recommend listening to it that way if this book at all interests you. So these are some of the books that I have read recently. What have you guys read recently, and have you read any of these? And if you did, what did you think of them? Also, if you stuck around this far, leave me some grapes in the comments below. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!